Hello, friends and strangers alike, and family, if any of you are watching. Yesterday, I finished watching the Oversight Committee meeting with the Comptroller General, Dodaro, and his team. This meeting is conducted multiple times a year in which he informs the House on the high-risk issues the nation is facing. There are things that have been on that list since before he became the Comptroller General. Things that have remained unresolved. And let's be honest, it's been since Clinton at least that since Congress tried to balance the budget. Then they just didn't anymore. Which is a part of the reason why we're in so much trouble financially. We have a massive debt that is going to sink this ship. And that is one of the main points that he made. Mr. Dodaro, that is. That if we do not turn things around, if we do not change the way we operate financially, that America is going to become insolvent and is going to go belly up. Now, if the members of the House had stuck to fact-finding and learning from that amazing nonpartisan team, it would have been very educational, and sometimes it was. Unfortunately, far too much time was wasted by the Democrats and Republicans sniping each other and complaining to Mr. Dodaro instead of making direct use of the knowledge he and his team bring to bear, which is just an enormous waste of taxpayer money. Perhaps we should cut the wages for the president and for the Congress, since they seem to spend more time arguing pettily than they do actually being constructive. It was draining to see so much pettiness when both parties are responsible for the woes America faces. Although the Supreme Court plays a significant role when they make selfish or evil decisions, like allowing dark money back into elections through the Trojan horse Citizens United, which should be called Rich Unethical Citizens United. The executive branch also is at fault, with each president and the branch at large contributing. Further, the states are at fault, especially in cases of fraud and waste. Finally, the criminals are at fault for harming the government through their selfish and destructive actions. Who will be hurt the least if America goes belly up? The rich. Some people who are very rich have no loyalty to the country they are in, and in fact, they'll play both sides. This is something you can learn if you read the history of the Rothschild family, or Rothschild. Red Shield is what it means. When there were wars, they would fund both sides. And then, because the governments, which were monarchies, had so much debt, they had that family had a lot of influence over them. But I guess we, the taxpayers, also share some burden of responsibility, but it varies from one person to the next. Some people have taken great advantage of flaws in the system and made themselves very rich, and many other people have not. And those of you who have been ripping off the system, you are definitely part of that problem that is allowing the Republicans to keep on pointing to the fraud that is being committed using various departments, from the IRS, which is, oh, by the way, the IRS is going to be cut. Already has lost, I think, 6,500 employees. I'm not looking forward to the House budget bill debate video, which I started today. It has been every bit as much petty and divisive. Our politicians, by and large, are pathetic, and some are criminals. I wish I didn't have to say that, but it's been that way for a long time. Wish I didn't have to say that either, but it's the truth. So regarding the House debate over the budget bill that the Republicans came up with the blessings of His Holiness Trump, back and forth, the Republicans and Democrats keep casting blame on each other. I'm not done with this video. I have only gotten through 1 hour of it out of the 4 hours that there are. Yay. And it's excruciating to watch all the time that is wasted not actually figuring out how to make the bill better, but just casting blame back and forth. It's like watching a volleyball game, but it's not fun. It's not interesting. And in the end, most of us don't win. I wish I had the ability to know what's really going on, but sadly, I don't know where to look for explanatory documentation on how the Republican budget bill is going to actually bring to fruition the stated plans of this administration. The Republicans keep saying it's going to be a new age of prosperity, and one even admitted that it's a bill for billionaires in their little speech. New age of prosperity, bill for billionaires. Okay. It's a new age of prosperity for the billionaires, but they're already prosperous, so that's kind of weird. They claim that the only place the reductions can be made is from the social side of the government. Programs like Medicaid, SNAP, which is food stamps, TANF, and the VA are all going to lose support. Fortunately, the SSA, or Social Security Administration, will not. They completely ignore the fact that the military budget could be decreased too. They also completely ignore the fact that Congress owes the American people billions of dollars that they stole from SSA to pay for other things and promised to repay but did not. And that's on everybody in Congress. I don't care if you weren't there when they did it. You're still responsible. It's your job to fix it. And by the way, when Mr. Dodaro was speaking to the House Committee on Oversight, he did point out that if things don't change, Social Security will be dead in 8 years. The Democrats keep on spewing out the number of people on Medicaid in their state, harping on the fact that the ultra-rich disproportionately benefit and that the bill increases the deficit. That is an undeniable fact. It is clearly shown in the bill. Yes, I looked at it. Depending on how you do the math, that increase could be $2.5 trillion because Trump wants more money for the military. But they're also cutting support for the VA, so soldiers will likely get worse support than any time in recent history. So we can naively say that the deficit will increase by $2.5 trillion, but that is not correct. Why? Because the rich get a large tax cut again, just like the last time Trump was president. That means that the deficit increase will be more than $3 trillion, both because of the lost tax revenue and because the government will have to borrow more to cover that loss. Of course, the losses from the rest of us also count, but Trump is primarily helping the rich. That's where a very large amount of tax revenue comes from. And it just keeps on getting smaller. You may think, but if the rich get tax breaks, that means they'll give us better wages. No. When Reagan introduced the bullshit trickle-down economics, anyone who knows what trickle means said, oh shit! The fact is this. The salaries of top employees have risen over 2,000%, while the average worker's wages have barely moved at all from 1970. Tax breaks given to corporations have not resulted in salary increases for the masses, nor have they resulted in lowered prices. When the government bailed out the financial institutions earlier this century, most of those places gave out bonuses, had parties, and lived at large instead of showing fiscal responsibility. That's because they're banks. They don't care about us. They just want our money so they can do what they want with it. That's how banks work. If you're going to a bank for your financial services, you're stupid. Go to a credit union. In 2001, I worked for T-Tech, and earned $10 an hour. When I returned from overseas in 2017, they offered me a similar job at $10 an hour. Naturally, I said, screw yourself. That's how big business operates. I am concerned that most of the Republicans refer to Trump's agenda as if the legislative branch is supposed to kowtow to the president and that his agenda is what defines their decisions, which is in defiance of the checks and balances of our governmental system. They have blocked just about every effort by the Democrats in the House and Senate to rein in Musk, Doge, the Supreme Court, and other areas of concern for the general public. Even just getting Musk to come in and explain to the Oversight Committee was something that the Republicans would not allow. Unfortunately, when I looked at the bill, I saw nothing encouraging me to believe that this bill will stimulate the economy except for the military-industrial complex, which multiple leaders across time have warned about. The bill tells us nothing except numbers, and that, should Congress succeed in cutting more than $2 trillion from other areas, the $4.5 trillion will be increased by that excess. So let's just say that Congress manages to, say, cut $3 trillion from social safety networks or nets. Then the deficit will be increased by $5.5 trillion. Or not $5.5 trillion, but that surplus of money that's been robbed from these areas over here will be shifted over to the military-industrial complex. So it's not really an increase in the deficit, I guess. I don't know. If you're a mathematician, let me know if that's wrong. In other words, no matter what else happens, the real increase of the deficit will be over $3 trillion at a time when the Comptroller General, as he has in many years previously, is telling the Congress to decrease the deficit, not increase it. I don't trust the Democrats much more than the Republicans, but Jamal Jeffries made a very important point that I'd forgotten about. This point is that during my life, every Democratic president and his administration has decreased the deficit and done some bad things. And every Republican president and his administration has increased it and done bad things too. You can see that in the video. If you want to watch it, you start at marker, what is it? Start at 1 hour and 6 minutes. And you will be able to listen to Mr. Jeffries explain just how poorly the Republicans have managed our money. And it is factual because all you have to do is look at records and at reports and so on. And I've seen some of them in the past. The deficit goes like this, and then a Republican gets out of the office, a Democrat goes into office, it goes down. Now, admittedly, during Trump's first term, when the pandemic hit, part of the deficit increase was not because of him, but because of shutting everything down and having to support everybody. So out of the $8 million that the deficit increased during his term, and however much it was in Biden's term, and also again now because FEMA and other departments are still struggling to deal with the problems of COVID-19, not to mention monkeypox and the bird flu. If you're wondering why egg prices have gone up, it's because of the bird flu. They've had to kill a lot of chickens, and bird flu has been crossing over to other animals. It has been found, I believe it was in cows, and in January, the first American died of bird flu. In November of last year, a Canadian was severely ill with bird flu, and is being transmitted not just by livestock, but also by wild birds. So we have a significant problem, but the Trump administration cut employees from that team at a time when we need them, and cut funding for research into the bird flu at one of the universities, I forget which one. So they will not be able to proceed with their research in trying to find a solution to the bird flu. The Republicans, with Trump at the head, are stating that they're going to make everything better. Make America great again. And I think some of the things that they're trying to accomplish will do that, will help at least. But I see a lot of things that either they're doing good, but they're not being transparent about how that's good so that the American public can understand, or they're not doing good. And hear what Mr. Jeffries has to explain about the way Republicans mismanage our money. And I'm not saying Democrats don't, but the Republicans have been in control of Congress for how long now? And the Republicans are in control of the Supreme Court, and that's been for quite since Trump's last term. And we have a sitting Republican president, and his administration is highly Republican as he pushed Schedule F back into function and is forcing people who are not loyal to him to leave or kowtow to him. And that is the way a monarch operates, or a dictator. I would just like to emphasize that every person in the House Oversight Committee, when speaking to Mr. Dodaro and his team, showed nothing but respect. Nothing but respect. Every one of them thanked him. He's retiring soon, so we will not have him at the helm of the GAO to try and get Congress to do the right thing anymore. Hopefully somebody more forceful who is nonpartisan will be replacing him. But they all respect him. None of them said anything bad about him. In fact, oftentimes when I listened to the way they spoke to him, it was like listening to children talking to their dad complaining about their siblings. Literally. It was very frustrating, and I felt bad for Mr. Dodaro having to listen to all this whining and bitching and moaning. And it wasn't like just certain people. I mean, people on both sides of the aisle were doing it. And it was frustrating because I wanted to learn from this very long video as much as I could about what's wrong with our country, the high-risk areas. And it did touch on it, but I'm going to have to actually read the full report from the GAO. I don't have time to read hundreds or thousands of pages. Suffice it to say that it was frequently pointed out that there are things that he and his predecessors reported that are still on the list. The Congress is not doing its job. The presidents have not done their job. High-risk areas. So when Mr. Dodaro was asked, was it good that the VA budget was cut? He very deferentially said, no, it's not really a good idea. He pointed out that the VA is short-staffed of nurses, which are the backbone, and also that they're short-staffed of mental health workers, and that 17 veterans a day average kill themselves. And that's partially because there's not enough funding for the VA. We can fund the heck out of the military, but to take care of our mentally wounded soldiers afterwards, that's not important. To properly care for the military, the retired military, apparently Donald Trump doesn't think that's a priority. I could go on and on and on and on and on. I wish that instead of bickering and complaining in these two meetings, these two teams, plus the independents, of whom apparently none of them voted either way on the budget, because every Republican voted yes, every Democrat voted no, as far as I could tell. I wish they would sit down and say, okay, we need to find a solution that will actually decrease the deficit without prioritizing benefiting the rich and the military-industrial complex, and without screwing over the poor. If there's a problem with fraud and waste, it must be addressed. in a way that forces every state to fix the problems that they have, at the risk of losing some or all of their funding. It's that simple. They couldn't even say that. At least not in the hour that I've watched. It's just blah, 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 blah. Daddy, no, daddy, mommy. It's pathetic. What do we hire them for? They aren't earning their money. They spend so much time in committees and in these general meetings whining and blaming the other side. This is not politics. This is just childishness. This is pettiness. And it really is aggravating. So, just to recap, I looked through the bill, and it is a very cut and dried, this is how much we're going to decrease this department or this area, and this is how much we're going to increase this, and then decrease, increase. There aren't very many areas in which they're increasing it. The military is the biggest one, $4.5 trillion. But at least $2 trillion from all the other areas. And that includes the social safety nets. That includes the VA. If you think that, and the majority of Americans, based on the 11 polls that I looked at, the majority of Americans think that, Congress needs to get things under control here financially. If you think that Congress needs to actually decrease the deficit instead of adding $4.5 trillion or $2.5 trillion or $3 trillion or whatever it's going to end up being, you should call your representatives and senators and let them know that. Especially the Republicans. Especially if you voted for them, because you can say, I voted for you and I'm not happy that you're increasing the deficit, that you're increasing our debt as a nation, while the rich get to walk away with more money, while the military industrial complex gets to get more money. I want you to fix this, or I'm going to vote Democrat, or I'm going to vote for somebody else that will something. They're only there for 2 years, right? Scare the heck out of the ones who've been there a long time, because they're the ones who are usually leading Congress. The seniors, the ranking members, are the ones who are generally the most problematic on both sides. I'm not saying the Democrats are great. They're not. The only reason I voted for any Democrats this time around is because the Republicans have become so evil. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, and the number of Christians who are like, well, Jesus said, help the poor, but I don't want to help the poor. It just boggles my mind that these people don't want to follow the teachings of Jesus when it comes to helping other people. And yes, I get it. There's fraud, there's waste. We need to address those things. But cutting programs is not going to do that. Cutting staffing, if you do it by merit, which is what Trump and Musk claimed they were doing, then great. But if they just go in and say, okay, all of you people who are still probationary, you're gone. And if they violate the agreements with the union, which I knew was going to happen because they've done it, they violated union agreements, even though Trump said he was going to support unions. And they've gutted the National Labor Relations Board, so it has very little power. Why? Because Bezos hates the union. Zuckerberg hates the union. All of them hate the union. They hate having to actually do the right thing. All right, enough of my ranting. I'm going to show you what Mr. Jeffries said. Thanks for watching. I need to ask for your help. On December 11th, 2024, Amazon fired me under false pretenses. And on the 17th, I had surgery for the injury that occurred at Amazon that Amazon and Sedgwick refused to take responsibility for. So it's coming out of my pocket and my insurance company's pocket. So that means I'm unemployed and I will not be getting short-term disability from Amazon or from Sedgwick. So my financial situation is a bit of a problem right now. If you would like to help me, there are some things you can do. Number one, you can like, subscribe, share, comment, and turn on notifications on my channels. Number two, if you'd like to give a one-time donation, and please don't do this if you can't afford it, you can, on the Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, do a super thanks. Number three, if you would like to help me on a monthly basis, you can become a member on Glenn's Fast Reviews, and or you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there. Thank you so much for your support.